Welcome to the Agile Uprising podcast. Today we have a fascinating and unique narrative brought to you by Jay Hrcsko, who will take us on a journey into the world of ants. But this isn't just any ordinary story about ants. It's about how these incredible creatures reorganize themselves according to hierarchy rather than their usual pheromone-based communication system. Jay, our keen observer and storyteller, will detail how this hierarchical shift plays out when these ants must defend their anthill from a group of determined agilists. So let's dive into the world of Formica sapiens and see what lessons we can learn.
On the hierarchy of ants. Chapter 1. The Shift in Order. Jay had always been fascinated by the natural world, particularly the intricate lives of ants. As a researcher and avid observer, he spent countless hours documenting the behavior of different colonies. The anthill of Formica sapiens was his latest subject of study, a colony known far and wide among the insect kingdoms for its efficiency and order. One day, while scrolling through a recent scientific journal, Jay came across an article that intrigued him. The article was written from a third-person perspective, detailing a groundbreaking shift in the organization of the Formica sapiens colony. Jay couldn't believe what he was reading. The ants had decided to move away from their natural, pheromone-guided behavior to a more hierarchical structure. He delved into the article, fascinated by every detail. The sun was just beginning to rise over the small clearing in the forest where the anthill of Formica sapiens stood. It was a bustling colony, with ants of every kind moving purposefully, each performing their roles seamlessly through the use of intricate pheromone trails. From foragers and soldiers to caretakers and builders, each ant knew its place. However, a new era was about to dawn on this colony, driven by a novel idea proposed by their visionary queen, Queen Formita. Jay read with rapt attention as the article described how Queen Formita, with her golden thorax glistening in the early morning light, addressed her subjects from atop the highest mound of the anthill. "My dear ants," she began, her voice echoing through the tunnels, "we have long relied on our pheromones to guide us, but as our colony grows, we need a more structured system to ensure our continued prosperity and safety. From today onwards, we shall organize ourselves according to a hierarchy." As Jay read, he couldn't help but chuckle. Imagine that, he thought, ants developing a hierarchy. Next, they'll be holding board meetings and discussing quarterly profits. He remembered a book he had read about bees forming a monarchy and wondered if insects had a secret subscription to Humans Monthly. The idea of tiny ant CEOs and middle managers was both amusing and oddly fitting in a way he couldn't quite put his finger on. The declaration was met with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Jay could almost feel the tension and uncertainty among the ants. They had always believed in the wisdom of their queen, but this was a radical change. Nonetheless, they trusted Queen Formita and began to reassign roles based on a new hierarchy. Jay was captivated by the description of how the ants responded to this new order. The article detailed the establishment of the new hierarchy with meticulous precision. At the top were the queen and her closest advisors, the High Council of Ants, responsible for making strategic decisions. Below them were the captains of the guard, tasked with defense and security. The builders and engineers followed, overseeing construction and maintenance of the anthill. Foragers, once the lifeblood of the colony, were now organized into squads led by seasoned gatherers. The youngest ants were assigned to caregiving and basic tasks, ensuring the colony's day-to-day operations continued smoothly. High Council of Ants, Jay mused, sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel. Maybe Tolkien's ants would have formed a council too, if they weren't too busy being, well, trees. He imagined the High Council members wearing tiny robes and carrying miniature scepters, debating the merits of different types of leaves for their food stores. The article highlighted that, at first, the transition was seamless. The hierarchical structure brought a sense of order and predictability. Tasks were completed with newfound efficiency, and the colony flourished. However, Jay noted the article also mentioned some flaws. The absence of the flexible pheromone trails meant that some tasks took longer to complete as ants waited for instructions from their superiors. Jay couldn't wait to visit the Formica sapiens colony in person. He was eager to observe firsthand how this hierarchical system would play out and what it meant for the future of ant colonies. Little did he know, this shift in order would lead to challenges and discoveries that would change his understanding of the natural world forever. As he closed the journal, Jay leaned back in his chair, grinning. Who knew ants could be so human, he thought. Maybe I'll write my own paper. Corporate structure in insect societies when ants go corporate. He chuckled at the thought and made a mental note to bring extra notebooks and a sense of humor when he visited the Formica sapiens anthill. Chapter 2: The New Order. Jay arrived at the clearing just as the sun began to peek through the dense forest canopy. The air was fresh, and the anthill of Formica sapiens was already bustling with activity. He settled into his usual observation spot, eager to see how the new hierarchical system was playing out. The new hierarchy had been established with meticulous precision. At the top were the Queen and her closest advisors, the High Council of Ants, responsible for making strategic decisions. Below them were the captains of the guard, tasked with defense and security. The builders and engineers followed, overseeing construction and maintenance of the anthill. Foragers, once the lifeblood of the colony, were now organized into squads led by seasoned gatherers. The youngest ants were assigned to caregiving and basic tasks, ensuring the colony's day-to-day operations continued smoothly. Jay scribbled notes furiously as he watched the ants adapt to their new roles. This is like watching a medieval kingdom in miniature, he thought, amused. I half expect to see jousting tournaments and ant-sized catapults any minute now. He chuckled at the mental image of ants in tiny suits of armor, galloping on beetleback. At first, the transition seemed seamless. The hierarchical structure brought a sense of order and predictability. Tasks were completed with newfound efficiency, and the colony flourished. However, Jay noticed some cracks in the system. The absence of the flexible pheromone trails meant that some tasks took longer to complete as ants waited for instructions from their superiors. Imagine waiting for your boss to tell you how to chew a leaf, Jay mused. Not the most efficient way to run things, but hey, they're trying something new. He remembered reading about human organizations facing similar issues when transitioning to more rigid structures, and found the parallels both humorous and enlightening. He watched as a squad of foragers, led by an experienced ant named Anton, hesitated at a fork in the trail. Without the usual pheromone markers, they seemed unsure of which direction to take. Anton, now responsible for making the decision, paused to assess the situation. Jay could almost hear the internal monologue. Left for food, right for certain doom. Decisions, decisions. Meanwhile, the builders and engineers worked diligently on fortifying the anthill. Under the supervision of architect Ari, they constructed new chambers and reinforced tunnels. Jay noted their efficiency, but also the occasional bottlenecks as workers waited for orders. It's like watching construction crews on a job site, he thought, standing around waiting for someone to tell them what to do. In the center of the anthill, the captains of the guard drilled their soldiers. Captain Korea barked orders, her antennae twitching with authority. The soldiers moved with precision, but Jay noticed a slight delay in their responses compared to when they relied solely on pheromone cues. Ant boot camp, he chuckled. All they need now is a sergeant major yelling at them to do push-ups. Despite these minor hiccups, the colony adapted remarkably well to the new system. The youngest ants, now assigned to caregiving roles, bustled about with energy and enthusiasm. Jay watched as they tended to the larvae and maintained the nurseries with care. At least the kids seemed to be handling it well, he thought. Kids are always the most adaptable. As the day progressed, Jay continued to observe and document the colony's activities. The hierarchical structure, while not without its challenges, seemed to bring a new level of organization to the anthill. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The fluidity and adaptability of the pheromone trails had been a vital part of the ants' success, and their absence was keenly felt. Jay leaned back, reflecting on what he had witnessed. They've traded flexibility for structure, he thought. But can they find a way to balance both? He made a mental note to watch for any signs of integration between the old and new systems. The ants of Formica sapiens were resilient and resourceful, and Jay had no doubt they would find a way to make it work. As the sun set and the forest grew quiet, Jay packed up his notes and equipment. He glanced back at the anthill, now a silhouette against the fading light. "Good night, little kingdom," he murmured. "I'll see you tomorrow." Chapter 3: The Agilists' Challenge. Jay arrived at the clearing the next morning, his curiosity piqued by the new developments in the Formica sapiens colony. He had heard whispers of a group of human agilists, led by the fervent agilist Amanda, planning to interfere with the ants. Jay couldn't believe it at first. Humans meddling with ant politics. The idea was as bizarre as it was fascinating. He set up his observation equipment, determined to document whatever was about to unfold. As he adjusted his camera, he couldn't help but think of Amanda and her team. They were known for their passionate, sometimes extreme views on organizational efficiency. Jay had read their articles and watched their talks, always finding their enthusiasm both inspiring and slightly unnerving. Led by the fervent agilist Amanda, Jay muttered, chuckling to himself. Sounds like the opening of a sci-fi novel. Next, they'll be building robots to teach ants a lesson. He imagined a tiny robotic overlord lecturing ants on the benefits of self-organization and had to stifle a laugh. The agilists began their interference by disrupting the colony's food supply. Jay watched as they scattered the foraging trails and set traps. The once efficient squads of foragers now found themselves in disarray, unable to adapt quickly to the changing environment. Without the usual pheromone trails to guide them, communication was slow and panic began to spread. Humans interfering with ant politics, Jay thought, shaking his head. What's next? Lobbying for insect rights? He couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation, even as he felt a twinge of sympathy for the beleaguered ants. Jay observed Anton and his squad of foragers, now struggling to navigate the disrupted trails. Anton, visibly stressed, tried to direct his team, but the lack of pheromone guidance made it difficult. The ants hesitated, unsure of which way to go. Jay could almost hear Anton's exasperated thoughts. Great, just great. First, they take away our pheromones, and now this. Meanwhile, Amanda and her team watched from a distance, their expressions a mix of satisfaction and anticipation. Jay noted their meticulous planning and execution. They're treating this like a live experiment, he thought. But do they realize the chaos they're causing? The captains of the guard, sensing the growing threat, rallied their soldiers. Captain Karia, ever vigilant, barked orders to her troops. Jay watched as the soldiers mobilized, their movements precise, but lacking the fluidity that pheromone communication once provided. The delay in their responses was evident, and Jay couldn't help but feel a pang of frustration on their behalf. It's like watching a medieval siege, he thought. The only thing missing is a trebuchet. He took note of how the ants struggled to communicate without their pheromone trails and felt a pang of frustration on their behalf. Jay's attention shifted to the High Council of Ants, convening in an emergency meeting. Queen Formida, realizing the gravity of the situation, addressed her advisors. "We must defend our home," she declared, her voice resolute. "Our hierarchy has made us strong, but we need to adapt to this new challenge." The ants prepared for battle, fortifying the anthill and setting up defensive positions. The agilists, armed with knowledge of the ants' behavior, launched their assault. They used smoke and water to confuse and disorient the soldiers. The ants fought valiantly, but the rigid hierarchy hindered their ability to respond swiftly. Jay watched the chaos unfold with a mix of fascination and concern. It's like watching a medieval siege, he thought. The only thing missing is a trebuchet. He took note of how the ants struggled to communicate without their pheromone trails and felt a pang of frustration on their behalf. As the day wore on, Jay saw the toll the interference was taking on the colony. The once efficient system was now bogged down by the very structure that was supposed to make it stronger. He leaned back, pondering the situation. They've traded flexibility for structure, he thought, but can they find a way to balance both? The struggle continued, and Jay's respect for the ants grew. Despite the odds, they persisted, adapting as best they could to the disruption. He admired their resilience and couldn't wait to see what solution they would come up with next. Chapter 4. The Defense of the Anthill. The situation at the Formica sapiens anthill was growing increasingly dire. Jay watched intently as the ants struggled to adapt to the ongoing disruptions caused by the agilists. The normally efficient colony was in disarray, and the tension was palpable. The captains of the guard, sensing the growing threat, rallied their soldiers. Captain Karia, her antennae twitching with determination, barked orders to her troops. Jay watched as the soldiers mobilized, their movements precise but lacking the fluidity that pheromone communication once provided. The delay in their responses was evident, and Jay couldn't help but feel a pang of frustration on their behalf. Queen Formida, realizing the gravity of the situation, called for an emergency meeting of the High Council. Jay could almost hear her commanding voice as she addressed her advisors. "We must defend our home," she declared, her voice resolute. "Our hierarchy has made us strong, but we need to adapt to this new challenge." Jay scribbled notes furiously, his mind racing with thoughts about the parallels between the ants' struggle and human organizations facing external threats. It's like watching a corporate boardroom during a hostile takeover, he thought, amused by the comparison, only with more legs and less paperwork. The ants prepared for battle, fortifying the anthill and setting up defensive positions. The agilists, armed with knowledge of the ants' behavior, launched their assault. They used smoke and water to confuse and disorient the soldiers. Jay watched, fascinated as the ants fought valiantly but struggled to coordinate without their pheromone trails. It's like a medieval siege, Jay mused. All they need now is a battering ram. He imagined the agilists in knightly armor, charging at the anthill with tiny catapults, and had to stifle a laugh. The soldiers, led by Captain Korea, did their best to repel the invaders. Jay noted their bravery and determination, even as they faced overwhelming odds. He could see the strain in their movements and the desperation in their actions. They're like little heroes, he thought, fighting against impossible odds. In the midst of the chaos, Jay's attention was drawn to a young ant named Antonia. She had always been fascinated by the old ways and had a knack for thinking outside the box. Jay watched as she moved through the chaos with a sense of purpose, her eyes bright with determination. What if we combined the strength of our hierarchy with the adaptability of our pheromones? Antonia suggested, her voice ringing clear above the din. Jay could almost hear the gears turning in Queen Formida's mind as she considered the idea. Queen Formida, seeing the wisdom in Antonia's words, ordered the immediate deployment of pheromone trails, alongside their hierarchical commands. The effect was instantaneous. The soldiers, now able to communicate rapidly, adapted their strategies. The foragers, guided by both their leaders and the scent trails, quickly re-established supply lines. Jay watched in awe as the tide of the battle began to turn. The agilists, taken aback by the sudden shift, found themselves overwhelmed. The ants of Formica sapiens, now a blend of order and flexibility, successfully defended their home. Jay couldn't contain his excitement. Yes! Go, ants! Go! He cheered, then quickly looked around to make sure no one had heard him. He felt a sense of pride in the ants' ingenuity and adaptability, as if he were rooting for a team of underdogs in a sports match. As the battle wound down, Jay marveled at the resilience and resourcefulness of the ants. They had faced an unprecedented challenge and emerged stronger for it. He made a note to include Antonia's innovative thinking in his report, highlighting her as a key player in the colony's victory. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the clearing. Jay packed up his equipment, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The ants of Formica sapiens had shown that strength lay not in rigid hierarchy or uncontrolled freedom, but in the balance between the two. Jay couldn't wait to see what other lessons the ants would teach him in the days to come. Chapter 5. A Return to Roots. The aftermath of the battle left the Formica sapiens colony in a state of exhaustion and reflection. Jay watched as the ants began to regroup and strategize their next moves. He couldn't help but feel a deep respect for their tenacity and ingenuity. Queen Formida called for a meeting of the High Council to discuss their future. Jay leaned in, eager to see what new strategies they would devise. He had a feeling that Antonia's suggestion would play a pivotal role in the colony's recovery. Antonia, the young and innovative auntie who had proposed combining the hierarchy with the pheromone trails, stood confidently before the Queen and the High Council. What if we combined the strength of our hierarchy with the adaptability of our pheromones? She reiterated. Jay could almost hear the anticipation in her voice. Recognizing the wisdom in Antonia's words, Queen Formida ordered the immediate deployment of pheromone trails alongside their hierarchical commands. The transformation was swift. Soldiers now communicated rapidly, adapting their strategies with newfound agility. Foragers, guided by both their leaders and the scent trails, quickly re-established supply lines. Jay watched in awe as the colony began to function with a renewed sense of purpose. The ants moved with a precision that was both directed and adaptable, blending the best of both systems. It's like watching a finely tuned orchestra, Jay thought, admiring the harmony between structure and fluidity. The agilists, caught off guard by the ants' swift adaptation, found themselves at a disadvantage. Their well-laid plans were no match for the ants' newly integrated approach. Jay observed Amanda and her team from a distance, their expressions a mix of frustration and reluctant admiration. This isn't just about ants anymore, Jay mused. This is a lesson in resilience and innovation for all of us. Captain Korea led her soldiers with renewed vigor, their movements now precise and coordinated. The builders and engineers, guided by architect Ari, worked tirelessly to repair and reinforce the anthill. Foragers, under Anton's leadership, adapted quickly, ensuring that the colony's food supply was restored. Jay's attention was drawn to Antonia as she moved through the colony, her eyes bright with determination and pride. She had played a crucial role in their victory, and the colony recognized her for it. She's a true visionary, Jay thought, impressed by her innovative thinking and leadership. As the days passed, Jay continued to observe and document the colony's progress. The balance between hierarchy and pheromone trails had brought a new level of harmony and efficiency to the Formica sapiens anthill. Jay marveled at their resilience and resourcefulness, feeling a deep sense of respect for the tiny creatures. The agilists, though defeated, had also learned valuable lessons from the encounter. Jay noted that Amanda and her team began to incorporate some of the ants' strategies into their own teachings. Humans and ants learning from each other, Jay mused. Who would have thought? Queen Formida addressed her colony once more, her voice filled with pride and determination. Today, we have learned that strength lies not in rigid hierarchy or uncontrolled freedom, but in the balance between the two. We shall move forward as a united colony, embracing both our structure and our adaptability. The ants cheered, their voices echoing through the tunnels. Jay watched with a broad grin on his face, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The anthill of Formica sapiens stood as a testament to the power of unity and innovation, a beacon of hope in the insect kingdoms. As the sun set and the forest grew quiet, Jay packed up his notes and equipment. He glanced back at the anthill, now a silhouette against the fading light. "Good night, little kingdom," he murmured. "I'll see you tomorrow." Chapter 6. A New Dawn. With the battle behind them, the Formica sapiens colony entered a period of reflection and growth. Jay returned to the clearing, eager to observe how the ants would build upon their newfound balance between hierarchy and pheromone communication. The colony buzzed with a renewed energy. The ants had not only survived the assault, but had emerged stronger and more cohesive. Jay noted the seamless integration of their hierarchical structure with the adaptability of their pheromone trails. Tasks were completed with both efficiency and flexibility, a testament to their innovative approach. Queen Formida, standing proudly at the highest mound, addressed her subjects once more. Jay could almost hear her regal voice resonating through the tunnels. "Today, we have learned that our strength lies in the balance between structure and freedom. We shall move forward, united and resilient." Jay watched as the ants cheered, their tiny voices creating a harmonious chorus. The High Council of Ants, led by Queen Formida, worked tirelessly to implement new strategies that combined their strengths. Captain Caria and her soldiers refined their defense tactics, ensuring they could respond swiftly to any future threats. Architect Ari and the engineers optimized the anthill's design, making it both robust and adaptable. Antonia, whose innovative thinking had been pivotal during the crisis, was now a respected leader within the colony. Jay observed her as she guided foragers, blending pheromone trails with direct commands to create an efficient and responsive team. She's really come into her own, Jay thought, admiring her leadership. The agilists, though defeated, had also taken away important lessons. Jay noted that Amanda and her team began incorporating some of the ants' strategies into their own teachings. "It seems even humans can learn from ants," Jay mused with a smile. As the days turned into weeks, Jay continued to document the colony's progress. He marveled at their resilience and adaptability, feeling a deep sense of connection to the tiny creatures he had been studying. The ants of Formica sapiens had shown him that true strength lies not in rigid adherence to a single method, but in the ability to adapt and balance different approaches. The clearing was alive with activity, each ant performing its role with purpose and efficiency. Jay reflected on the journey the colony had undergone, from the initial disruption caused by the agilists to their triumphant adaptation and integration of new strategies. "It's like watching a living, breathing organism," he thought, each part working in harmony with the whole. One evening, as the sun set and the forest grew quiet, Jay sat back and reflected on the lessons he had learned from the ants. Their story of resilience, innovation, and balance had not only fascinated him, but had also inspired him. He realized that the principles the ants had demonstrated could be applied to human organizations and life itself. Queen Firmita's words echoed in his mind. Our strength lies in the balance between structure and freedom. Jay knew he would carry this lesson with him, sharing it with his students and colleagues. The ants had taught him that true strength comes from adaptability, unity, and the willingness to embrace change. As the last rays of sunlight faded, Jay packed up his notes and equipment. He glanced back at the anthill, now a silhouette against the twilight sky. "Good night, little kingdom," he murmured. "Thank you for the lessons. I'll see you tomorrow." Jay walked away from the clearing, his heart full of admiration and respect for the ants of Formica sapiens. They had shown him that even the smallest creatures could teach the most profound lessons. And as he made his way back to his lab, he knew that he would never look at an anthill the same way again. Epilogue: The Legacy of Formica sapiens. Years passed, and the story of the Formica sapiens ants became a well-known tale of innovation and resilience in the scientific community. Jay often recounted the tale to his students and colleagues, always with a twinkle in his eye and a chuckle at the parallels to human organizations. The Agile methodology, once strictly against hierarchies, now included lessons from Formica sapiens. Agilist Amanda and her team had incorporated the balance of structure and adaptability into their teachings, citing the ants as a prime example of effective integration. "If ants can do it, so can we," Amanda would often say, her respect for the tiny creatures evident. Jay continued his research, but the lessons from Formica sapiens remained a cornerstone of his work. He published numerous papers on the subject, emphasizing the importance of balance between rigid structure and flexible adaptation. His findings were met with acclaim, and he became a sought-after speaker at conferences and seminars. Back at the anthill, life continued with a harmonious blend of hierarchy and pheromone trails. The colony flourished, becoming a beacon of hope and inspiration in the insect kingdoms. Queen Formita, now older and wiser, watched with pride as her subjects thrived. The High Council of Ants continued to guide the colony with strategic decisions, always mindful of the lessons learned from their past struggles. Captain Karia's soldiers were ever vigilant, ready to defend their home with precision and agility. Architect Ari and the engineers constantly improved the anthill's design, ensuring it remained both robust and adaptable. Antonia, now a revered leader, continued to innovate and inspire, guiding the foragers and other ants with her vision of balanced efficiency. Jay's bond with the Formica sapiens colony deepened over the years. He visited them regularly, documenting their progress and marveling at their continued success. Each visit reinforced the profound respect he held for these tiny creatures and the lessons they had imparted. One sunny afternoon, Jay found himself sitting near the anthill, watching the ants go about their tasks with practiced ease. A sense of peace and fulfillment washed over him as he reflected on the journey they had shared. The ants had not only survived, but had thrived, becoming a symbol of resilience and innovation. As he sat there, a group of children from a nearby school approached, curious about the anthill and the man who spent so much time observing it. Jay smiled warmly and began to share the story of Formica sapiens, weaving in the lessons of balance, adaptability, and unity. The children listened with wide-eyed fascination, their imaginations captured by the tale of the heroic ants. Jay could see the spark of curiosity and wonder in their eyes, the same spark that had driven him to study the natural world so many years ago. As the children left, chattering excitedly about what they had learned, Jay felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The legacy of Formica sapiens would continue to inspire future generations, teaching them the value of balance and resilience. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the clearing. Jay stood up, stretching his legs, and took one last look at the anthill. "Thank you, my little friends," he murmured, "for everything." With a heart full of gratitude and a mind brimming with inspiration, Jay walked away from the clearing, knowing that the story of Formica sapiens would forever be a part of him. And as he made his way back to his lab, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to share the lessons of the ants with the world. The anthill of Formica sapiens stood as a testament to the power of unity and innovation, a beacon of hope in the insect kingdoms and beyond. The tiny creatures had shown that even the smallest beings could teach the most profound lessons, leaving a lasting legacy that would be remembered for generations to come. The end.
Thank you, Jay, for reading that compelling story about the Formica sapiens ants. It was fascinating to hear how these tiny creatures adapted and thrived under a hierarchical system while defending their home from the agilists. Your storytelling brought the ants' world to life and provided some great insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a review, a rating, or leave comments on iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcasting platform of choice. It really helps others find us. Much thanks to the artist Krebs from Machine Man Records who provided us our outro music free of charge. If you like what you heard, check out these links to find more music you might enjoy. If you'd like to join the discussion and share your stories, please jump into the fray at our Discord server. We at the Agile Uprising are committed to being totally free. However, if you'd like to contribute and help us defray hosting and production costs, we do have a Patreon. Who knows, you might even get some surprises in the mail. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Agile Uprising podcast.